Rain tapped against the shutters of the Tower of the Hand with a patient, needling insistence, as if the night itself meant to wear the oak thin and enter by drops. Eddard Stark sat alone with Grand Maester Mallion's ancient tome propped open before him, one broad hand flattened on the page lest the vellum curl back upon itself. The candles had burned low enough that the wax pooled white and glossy at their bases. They made a wavering gold of the chamber, a treacherous sort of gold that softened edges and turned the truth beautiful. Ned had no use for beauty in that hour. He had been reading the same page for so long that the names seemed to rise from it like ghosts. Lannister, black of beard, never. Baratheon, black of hair, black of eye, black of temper. Generation after generation, the same hard stamp of blood. Orys and Lionel and Roger and Steffan before Robert and Stannis and Renly. The seed was stubborn. Jon Arryn had seen that. Jon Arryn had died for it. Ned closed his eyes and saw again the armorer's apprentice in the street of steel, broad-shouldered and soot-faced, with Robert's jaw beneath common hair cut rough. He saw the baby girl in the brothel, little Bara in her mother's arms, with a cap of black hair and a hunger that made the horse smile despite her fear. He remembered Maya Stone from years before in the Vale, hard-handed and bold as any mountain guide, with the same easy strength her father had once carried like a banner. Robert sowed himself heedlessly, and in all the realm there was not a single golden child to show for it. He had known since dawn, known and refused to name it. Known and walked the galleries of the Red Keep as though the stones beneath his feet might shift into some kinder shape if he waited long enough. He had gone to the Sept, though the gods he prayed to were a world away and had no faces. He had stood beneath the painted eyes of the Seven and felt no comfort from them. He had thought of Sansa, soft with dreams. He had thought of Arya, fierce as the youngest wolf. He had thought of Joffrey's mouth when he smiled over the butcher's boy, and Tommen's frightened eyes, and Myrcella's sweet courtesy. Children died. Whatever seed had sired them, they were children. That had been where his resolve failed him in one future, the one that had haunted him all day long as a shape glimpsed from the corner of the eye. He knew the temptation. Go to the queen in her godswood, speak plain, let her flee while there was time. Spare the children. Spare Robert the public shame. Spare the realm the convulsion that must follow. Mercy was an easier road to imagine than law. Yet mercy to the false was treachery to the true, and every hour he let the lie stand gave Cersei Lannister another hour to strike. Jon Arryn was dead. Stannis had fled to Dragonstone. Robert hunted and drank and trusted too easily. If Ned played the soft-hearted fool for one more night, the next dead man might be Robert, and after him perhaps himself, and then his daughters, and then the realm entire. His hand went to the parchment waiting beside the book. He had broken the first quill. The second wrote in a harder line, "To Lord Stannis Baratheon, Lord of Dragonstone, Master of Ships, from Eddard Stark, Hand of the King." He paused there. The words that followed would break more than silence. They would break the peace. The matter you and Lord Arryn pursued has now come clear to me. The Queen's children are not of the King's blood. I have the Book of Lineages, and I have seen the King's bastards with my own eyes. His Grace rides hunting on the morrow. If you have any loyalty to your brother in the realm, come at once with all speed and all strength you can lawfully command. Delay will deliver us to the Queen. He did not write of fear. A man could smell fear in ink. He wrote instead of duty, because duty was the sort of chain Stannis understood. Bring proof. Bring witnesses, if you have them. Come under the King's banner, for I will not have it said that rebellion entered this city by stealth. If the matter is to be judged, let it be judged before the Iron Throne while Robert yet lives. When the seal was pressed into hot wax, the dire wolf and the stag lay side by side and read. Ned looked at them until the wax cooled and dulled. He summoned no servant. Instead, he took the letter himself through dark passages lit by single torches, past sleeping guards and snoring hounds, to the rookery where the maester's boys drowsed among cages and droppings and the damp smell of feathers. The eldest boy started up at once. all knees and fright. "My lord?" "This goes to Dragonstone." Ned set the sealed parchment in the boy's hand and watched his fingers curl around it. "Now, not with the dawn. Now." The boy swallowed. "Yes, my lord." Ned stood beneath the rustling rafters while the raven was brought, black wings beating against the keeper's arm. He watched the letter tide, watched the bird hop once, twice, then launch into the wet dark. It vanished so quickly that for an instant he wondered if he had dreamed it. On the stair down from the rookery he met Renly Baratheon in a cloak bright green even in the dimness, one gloved hand on the pommel of his sword, his face handsome and curious. "You look like a man who has seen his own grave," Renly said lightly. "Or perhaps someone else's. Which is it?" Ned had no taste for games. "The Queen's children are Jaime's." Renly's smile vanished as if wiped away. His first expression was not disbelief but relief, sharp and ugly and honest. So Lord Stannis was right. Ned stopped one stair above him. "You knew?" "I knew enough to be wary. I knew enough to wish Robert better bedfellows." Renly's jaw set tight. "Did you tell her?" "No." "Good." Renly glanced upward toward the rookery. "And now?" "Now I have sent for your brother." There was a little silence then, broken only by rain on the slit windows and the distant restless stir of a castle full of sleepers. Renly leaned back against the wall and let out a breath through his nose. "That will sour the Queen's sleep, if she sleeps at all." Ned studied him. "Will you stand with Stannis when he comes?" Renly's mouth twisted. "You ask that as if it were simple." "It is." "No," Renly said. "It is necessary. That is not the same thing." He pushed off the wall. "Robert must be protected first. If Cersei learns before Stannis arrives, she will move. Jaime will move. Lord Petter will find a way to profit from whichever corpse falls in the right place. Varys will wring his hands and know exactly where every dagger lies. I can bring my men quietly into the inner ward by dawn. You should put your Northmen at your own doors and tell the city watch the hand has ordered doubled patrols, because the king hunts." "Nay, Isienda." Ned gave a curt nod. Renly had more steel in him than he often cared to show. "One thing more," Renly said. "Do not trust Janos Slynt beyond the reach of a noose. I trust him exactly that far already." That almost won a smile, but not quite. Renly's expression thinned to thought. "When Stannis comes, he will come grim and lawful and with no gift for gentleness. Robert will be humiliated before half the court. He may strike first and think later. No, then we must see there is no bloodshed before he hears the truth." Renly looked past Ned into the dark as if trying to pierce the walls and glimpse the days ahead. "There will be bloodshed. The only question is where." When he had gone, Ned returned to the Tower of the Hand and found he could not sleep. He sat by the window with ice across his knees. Though the greatsword was ill-suited for chambers and politics alike, he listened to the rain diminish, listened to the castle settle, listened to his own heart hammering at old guilt. If Brandon had lived, he might have done this sooner and with less anguish. If Lyanna had lived, she might have laughed bitterly to see Robert blind to yellow hair and green eyes. If Jon Arryn had lived, perhaps the old man would have found some wiser path between truth and ruin. Yet the dead had done all they could. The rest belonged to the living. Near dawn, the clouds thinned. A pale gray seeped across the eastern panes. Hooves rang in the yard. Men called for hounds and spears. Robert's laughter rose up rough and full-throated, rolling against the stone like thunder. Ned did not go down to see him off. He remained where he was, staring at the lineage book until the words blurred. And in the blur he thought he could already see black sails cutting the bright skin of the bay. Far off on Dragonstone, the raven came with wet wings and a red direwolf seal. The maester woke Stannis before sunrise. Stannis read the letter once without expression, a second time with his mouth growing harder, and a third with such stillness that even Maester Crescent, who had watched him through fevers and losses and long humiliations, felt a chill that had nothing to do with the sea wind leaking beneath the chamber door. "So, Stannis said at last. The wolf found his teeth. Cresson clasped trembling hands in his sleeves. If Lord Stark has written true, he has. Stannis folded the letter with exactness. He would not send for me on suspicion only. Davos Seaworth had been summoned with the maester. He stood salt-stiff and watchful near the hearth, the shortened fingers of one hand spread against the stone to warm them. Then we sail at once. Stannis turned his gaze on him. Not we. The king's fleet, under the king's banner. I will not skulk into my brother's city like a thief in my own right. There may be no city left for him if you wait upon every proper form, Davos said. I said I would not skulk, not that I would wait. Stannis strode to the table where charts lay pinned by little carved dragons of black stone. Wake every captain who has sense enough to tell east from west. I want the harbor ready within the hour. Sir Axel is to bring the garrison down from the barracks. Lord Celtigar, if he is still abed, can dress aboard ship. We sail on the morning tide. Nah. Norman. Aisha. Cresson stared. With what word to the realm? Stannis' face might have been cut from the same basalt as the castle beneath them. With the truth. He laid Ned's letter beside the chart of Blackwater Bay, and as the first sun touched the narrow windows like a blade drawn from a sheath, Stannis Baratheon began to take the capital from the Lannisters in the king's own name. The sea was calmer than Stannis expected, though no kinder for it. Dragonstone fell away behind them as a shape of black towers and smoking mountain, and the fleet spread over the narrow water like a stain. There were sleeker ships than the Fury, brighter ones, lighter-handed captains, crews more given to song and boasting. But Stannis chose his brother's old war galley for the place beneath his feet, because Robert had taken her in the rebellion and named her in his youth, and because symbols mattered when steel was not yet drawn. Davos stood close by the rail, where the salt mist found him and seemed almost to know him. He had shed his court silks long ago and looked most himself in wool and leather gone shiny with weather. Below them the oars rose and bit, in a discipline the sea alone could teach. When we make the mouth of the Blackwater, Davos said, the harbor master may balk. The queen has had half the port bought in one way or another. The harbor master serves the crown. Davos' mouth moved in something too dry to be called a smile. Ay, and many men serve the crown by serving the fattest purse nearest at hand. Then let him look at the banners. Stannis kept his eyes fixed ahead. If he fails to understand those, he can understand a gibbet. The eastern sky had gone from iron to pearl. King's Landing would be waking now. Bakers cursing ovens to life in Flea Bottom. Fishwives elbowing for place near the riverfront. Apprentices rolling up shutters. Sept bells beginning their solemn lies. The city always stank from sea and offal and too many bodies packed within walls too small for them. Stannis had never loved it. A man could not love a place that rewarded smirking knaves and painted fools more readily than honest service. Yet it was his brother's city, the seat of the law, and law was all that stood between the realm and the appetites of those born to think themselves above it. He had thought often, in the long bitter years since Robert took the throne, that the city had never loved him in return. It remembered his grim face from the siege of Dragonstone, his lack of laughter in a court that measured a man by the ease with which he made others forget themselves. It remembered Renly's charm and Robert's thunder, and wondered why the middle brother had been fashioned with salt instead of blood. Let it wonder. Let it mutter. Stone did not care who loved it while it held. Cresson had pressed into his hand before departure a leather packet containing Jon Arryn's copied notes, thin and precise. Stannis had not opened them. He knew what they would say. The seed is strong, and gold had no place in that line. He needed no more proof now than the letter from Ned Stark and the memory of Jon Arryn's cautious eyes, grown troubled and fierce at the last. What of Lord Stark? Davos asked after a time. He writes as a man who has decided once and will not decide again. Stannis touched the direwolf seal through his glove where the letter lay inside his doublet. That kind is worth more than friendship. Davos glanced sideways at him. And Renly. There, the silence lengthened. "Renly wants what serves Renly," Stannis said at last. "But he hates the queen, and he is not witless. For today, that may suffice." The first harbor boats spied them when the sun cleared the haze. Tiny shapes altered course abruptly, oars flashing. Horns began to call from the city walls, thin over distance and water. A moment later, the nearest galleys in the royal harbor shifted at anchor. Men ran like ants upon their decks. "Too late," Davos murmured. Stannis raised one hand. The signalman snapped his flags. Drums rolled from ship to ship, not for battle but for command. Black and gold banners broke full in the morning wind, the crowned stag of Baratheon, unmistakable. The whole line of ships came on with implacable steadiness. Not raiders, not smugglers, not enemies from the stepstones, but the lawful strength of the crown returning to its own. At the mouth of the black water, the harbor chain was half raised. Men on the winches shouted conflicting orders. One of the gate towers flew the lion and stag of the royal house entwined. Stannis watched it with a cold dislike. That had always been the way of Robert's reign. One beast yoked beside the other until no man could say where gold ended and black began. "Signal the master of the harbor," he said. "By authority of the hand and master of ships, the fleet enters. Any man who impedes us is a traitor." The message went shrilling across the water by horn and flag. For a heartbeat, nothing changed. Then the chain jerked, rose another span, then another. Whatever coward or wise man had charge below had chosen his side. The fury passed beneath the towers into the river traffic of the city, and the smell of King's Landing struck them full in the face. Mud, fish, smoke, horse piss, stale ale, humanity thick and unwashed. Along the quays, men gaped and pointed. Women held children high to see. A few cried out cheers at the sight of royal banners. More simply stared, reading trouble in the ordered violence of so many armed decks. Ships thudded against piers. Ropes flew. Gangplanks crashed down. Stannis descended first, armored but unhelmed, his face pale and severe beneath the black hair already silvering at the temples. He wanted every man who saw him to know exactly who had come. Behind him poured Dragonstone men in ranks, sea-hardened, breastplates dull with salt, spears upright, cloaks dark as wet kelp. Davos came at his shoulder. Sir Axel Florent and Lord Montfort Valerion followed with their own retainers. There was no shouting, no rush, no drunken spilling into taverns. The very absence of disorder made the small folk recoil. Reivers and sellswords, they understood. This was something sterner. At the top of the quay steps waited Janos Slynt, broad as a cask in his gold cloak, sweat already shining at his jowls despite the cool hour. Around him clustered a knot of city watch officers in mail and yellow. Their hands rested close to sword hilts without yet gripping. "Lord Stannis," Slynt said, and the title came out thick. "We had no word. You have it now." Stannis mounted the steps until he stood eye to eye with the commander. He held out a parchment sealed in the hand's black wax and the king's own stag seal beneath. "By order of Eddard Stark, Hand of the King, and by my authority as master of ships, the city is to be secured in the king's peace. The gates are to be held. The harbor is closed to all vessels not bearing my leave or that of the hand. Any Lannister man-at-arms attempting to quit the city is to be seized." "No." Slynt's eyes flickered over the seals. He could read enough to know danger when it was written in wax. "There's no warrant here for..." Stannis stepped closer. "Hear me well. If you fail the king in this, I will hang you from your own gate and leave you for the crows. If you serve faithfully, you may keep your office until I find a cleaner man." A pulse beat in Slynt's neck. He licked his lips. Gold cloaks shifted uncertainly. Then, from farther up the hill, the hoofbeats came. Ned Stark rode down from the direction of the Red Keep with 20 of his household guard at his back. Gray cloaks darkened by the spray the morning wind drove off the river. Beside him rode Renly in green velvet over mail, bright as spring and twice as dangerous. Neither man looked surprised to find the fleet where it stood. Ned reined up before Slynt and read the fear in him at once. "You have your orders, Commander. Ned said. "Do your duty." It was the hand's voice that settled it. Slint dropped to one knee clumsily. "As you command, my lords." When he rose, he was already barking to his officers. Men scattered at a run toward the gatehouses. Watchmen took hold of the harbor cranes. Others moved to surround a cluster of red-cloaked Lannister guards near a warehouse, who blinked in astonishment as pikes lowered at their chests. Renly looked Stannis over with open appraisal. "You came quickly. You expected delay? I expect most things from most men." Renly's smile was quick and gone. "Come then. The queen thinks the king away and the city hers for the day. Let us disappoint her before she breaks her fast." "Nay, Maba." They climbed from the riverfront through streets already thickening with rumor. Small folk flattened themselves against walls to let the column pass. Shutters banged open overhead. Women crossed themselves. Men whispered. From every alley more eyes appeared. Word outran them like fire in dry grass. Stannis did not care. Let the city look. Let it remember who came wearing the law and not merely talking of it. At the foot of Aegon's high hill, the city seemed to hold its breath. Above them, the Red Keep rose red and grim, banners hanging from its towers in the sharpening light. Gold cloaks were already at the outer gate, taking the place of lion-cloaked guards with a haste that bordered on panic. On the walls, some of the archers still wore Lannister crimson. Others had been disarmed and set kneeling. The exchange had not been bloodless. One man lay near the barbican with a quarrel through his throat, and crows already watching from the merlons. Ned drew rein and looked up at the castle where his daughters slept, where the queen planned, where the lie had rooted itself around the throne like ivy around stone. "Once we pass that gate," he said, not loudly, "there can be no turning." "There was none when you loosed the raven," Stannis replied. For the first time that morning, Ned's mouth almost softened. "Then let us be done with half measures." Together they rode beneath the gate and into the Red Keep, and King's Landing passed into Stannis' hands before the sun had reached mid-morning. The first true cry of alarm rose from the yard of the Red Keep just as the kitchen boys were carrying bread up to the Queen's apartments. It began as confusion. A gold cloak at the wrong post. A stableman swearing that the harbor was shut. One of Renly's young stormlords in mail at the base of a stair where only Lannister guards had stood the night before. Then, the confusion sharpened. A woman screamed. Metal rang on metal. Servants scattered with trenchers dropped and bread rolling over the flags. Cersei Lannister heard it in her solar while her women laced her gown. For a moment she did not move. She listened, head turned slightly, the way a cat listens at a mouse hole. The sound came again. Boots in number, not the wandering tread of servants, but something organized and deliberate. She rose in one fluid motion. "Leave me." "My queen," said Sanel, pale already. "Out!" By the time the women had fled, Cersei had crossed to the casement and looked down into the inner ward. What she saw there froze the breath in her. Gold cloaks. Stark men in gray. Men in black and burnt gold she knew at once, though she had not seen their like in years. Sea soldiers from Dragonstone beneath the crowned stag. More were pouring through the arch from the outer yard. At their center rode Stannis. For one incredulous instant, rage overwhelmed calculation. Stannis died. Stannis, whom Robert had left brooding on his rock to count ships and grievances. Stannis, who had gone skulking from court rather than kneel to a brighter world. She had always despised that pinched mouth, those accusing eyes, the way he could make a room seem guilty simply by entering it. To see him now inside her walls, with the city watch opening paths before him, struck her like a slap. Then calculation returned in a cold rush. She went not to the door but to the cabinet beneath the carved lion on the wall, and drew out a small key. Inside was a packet of letters, a purse of coin, and a slim-bladed dagger. The letters she snatched up at once. The coin she left. Gold was useless if the wrong men held the gates. The dagger she slipped into her sleeve. "Jocelyn," she called. A guardsman entered, red cloak over mail, hand to sword. "Your Grace." "Fetch Sir Jaime." Now, Baratheon, tell the prince to remain in his chambers with Sandor. No one is to enter without my leave. If the outer doors are not already barred, bar them. No. He hesitated only long enough to understand from her face that the question of why could wait. Then he ran. Cersei crossed the chamber and sat deliberately in the high-backed chair by the hearth. She arranged her skirts. She set her mouth. When the door burst inward moments later to admit Eddard Stark, Stannis, and Renly Baratheon with a wedge of armed men behind them, she meant to look as though they had intruded upon her leisure, not her fear. Her pulse betrayed her by beating in her throat. She kept it from her face. "Lord Stark," she said coolly, "it seems the Hand has forgotten himself. One might think this a brothel raid." Ned's gray eyes were tired and implacable. "Your Grace, by order of the King's Hand and Lord Stannis, you are confined to your chambers pending the King's judgment." "My Lord Stannis?" Her laugh was lovely and edged like glass. "Has Robert yielded the throne to his peevish brother in the time it took him to ride into the Kingswood?" Stannis stepped forward. "Do not waste our time with jests. You are accused of adultery, treason, and conspiring to place your bastard offspring upon the Iron Throne." "Nah." There it was, naked and blunt. Renly winced as if even he found the lack of ornament jarring. Cersei looked from one to the next and found in none of them the slightest uncertainty. Something in her changed then. Not fear yet. Something harder. The moment for laughter had passed. "You dare." "I dare what the law requires," Stannis said. "Law." She let the word drip from her tongue like something sour. "You have always hidden your hungers inside that word." "My hunger is for truth," he returned. "Then starve." The side door opened behind her. Joffrey strode in with Sandor Clegane at his shoulder, and Tommen blinking sleepily in his wake, Myrcella clinging to her nurse's hand. Joffrey had thrown on a quilted jerkin over his nightshirt and wore a dagger at his belt, as if it made him a man. He stopped when he saw the company and his face flushed hot and ugly. "What is this?" he demanded. "Mother." Cersei did not look back. "Stand still." Joffrey's gaze fixed on Ned with immediate hatred. "You!" Renly moved before the prince could do something foolish enough to be useful. "Highness, you will remain quiet." "I will not." Joffrey's hand flew to his dagger. "You'll kneel when I..." Sandor's gauntleted hand closed on the boy's shoulder hard enough to halt him in mid-step. The hound said nothing, but his burnt face had gone watchful. He had no love for courts, and less for surprises. His small eyes flicked over the armed men, over Stannis, over the drawn line of their resolve. A hound knew when a room belonged to new masters. "Easy, boy," he growled. At that moment, the crash came from the outer hall. Jaime Lannister hit the door like a spear cast by a giant, two red-cloaked guards behind him, and white cloaks snapping. He had no helm on, only his golden hair tied back carelessly. But there was nothing careless in the way he came to a halt with sword already in hand, taking the whole scene in one bright, murderous glance. "Stand away from my sister," he said. No one moved. Jaime's smile was quick and terrible. "No? Then die where you stand." He came not at Stannis, whom he loathed, nor at Renly, whom he despised, but at Ned. Because Jaime knew at once which stone held the arch together. He moved faster than men who had never faced him believed a man could move. His sword turned the first thrust from Jory Castle and opened the captain from collar to ribs in the same beat. Jory fell with a grunt more of surprise than pain. The room erupted. Northmen lunged. Gold cloaks crowded the doorway. Sandor dragged Joffrey bodily behind him as steel flashed inches from the prince's face. Tommen screamed. Myrcella shrank against the nurse. Cersei was on her feet, the hidden dagger in her hand. Ned had drawn at last, shorter sword against Jaime's longsword, and would have died there if Stannis had not stepped in from the side with more courage than grace and caught Jaime's next stroke on a shield seized from one of his men. The blow rang like a bell and bit through wood to the boss. Jaime wrenched free, pivoted, cut down another guard, and was suddenly among too many bodies to finish any one foe cleanly. "Take the queen," Stannis shouted. Renly reached Cersei first, seizing her wrist before she could drive the dagger into Ned's back. She twisted with a lioness's fury and slashed his sleeve open to the elbow. He cursed, struck the knife from her hand, and two Northmen closed to bind her. She did not scream. She spat in Renly's face. Jaime saw that and changed at once. He had lost the room. The door was choking with men. More boots thundered in the hall. If he stayed, he would die or be taken, and Cersei in chains would be the ruin of them all. For the span of a single breath, his eyes met hers. "Run," she thought at him with everything she was. Jaime gave ground 3 steps, 4, slashing as he went. One of his guards went down beneath a spear. The other tried to follow and took a mace to the temple. Jaime himself took a cut across the ribs that turned his white cloak crimson in an instant, but he did not seem to feel it. He vaulted backward over the overturned table, smashed through the side casement with a shower of colored glass, landed catlight on the narrow roof of the covered walk below, and vanished before any man reached the broken window. "After him!" shouted Renly. "No," said Stannis at once. "Seal the gates. He cannot take the city with one sword." Ned knelt by Jory, but Jory's eyes were already going empty. The captain's blood spread black on the rushes. For a moment all the hall narrowed to that sight and the weight of old failures. Ned had brought his men south into a pit of lions. One more had paid for it. Then Joffrey was struggling again, red-faced with shock and rage, shouting for guards who no longer belonged to him. "Unhand me! I'm the prince, mother!" Cersei turned her head toward the sound while the cords were tightened at her wrists. Her face had gone very white, but there was no pleading in it, only hatred honed to diamond hardness. "Touch him and Robert will drown this castle in blood." Stannis looked at the golden boy as if he were examining rot and timber. "Robert's blood does not run there." Joffrey lunged forward with a wordless cry and would have struck him with his fists if Sandor had not hauled him back again. "I'll kill you," Joffrey panted. "I'll kill all of you." Sandor's lip curled. "Be still, your grace, or whatever they call you by supper." That silenced the chamber more effectively than a blow. Tommen was sobbing in earnest now, his little face blotched. Myrcella made no sound at all. She stared at Stannis with grave, frightened eyes that were too much like Cersei's and not at all like Robert's. Ned looked at her and felt his resolve tear inside him. "Children," said one part of him. "Children, innocent of the bed they were begotten in." Another part, colder, answered, "Innocent or not, crowns have been set on smaller heads for lesser lies." He rose slowly. "The children are to be kept safely and apart from the queen until the king returns." Cersei laughed then, a low, rich sound with madness at the heart of it. "Safely. Listen to him, Stannis. The honorable wolf means to put silken leashes on cubs and call it kindness." "What I mean," Ned said, "is that no harm is to come to them." Stannis's jaw tightened. "They will be kept under guard." "Guard them as you like," Cersei said. "They remain Robert's heirs until Robert says otherwise. And when he sees what you've done." "He will see what you have done," Ned replied. For the first time, something flickered across her face that was not contempt, not guilt. Never that. But the recognition that the room she had long ruled had been taken from her cleanly, and all at once, that the habits and fears and little-bought loyalties on which she depended had broken like cobwebs before a stronger hand. Stannis had not come with whispers. He had come with ships and seals and men prepared to act while others still talked of what might happen. Below, in the yards and corridors of the Red Keep, the struggle was already ending. Lannister guards were being disarmed. Gold cloaks were taking posts at towers and gates. The portcullises of Maegor's holdfast rattled down. A bell began to ring in the city, not the call to prayer or celebration, but the alarm that told King's Landing some portion of its peace had just been stolen. By noon, the Queen was in a guarded tower room overlooking Blackwater Bay. Joffrey in another, under the Hound's sullen watch. Tommen with a maester, and 2 sworn swords. Myrcella with septum ordained, and a pair of North women Ned trusted more than half the court. The raven cage at the rookery had been turned upside down. Every letter leaving the castle would bear the hand's seal or Stannis. Jaime was gone. He had taken a swift horse from the lower stables before the outer gates closed fully and ridden west through the Lion Gate with blood down his side and murder behind his eyes. 3 gold cloaks lay dead in the attempt to stop him. Janos Slynt sent men after him for form's sake, but no one in the Red Keep believed they would catch the Kingslayer before he crossed the city and found open road. Stannis stood in the throne room that afternoon while light spilled from the high windows onto the steps of the Iron Throne. He did not sit. He never would, not while Robert lived. Yet the throne loomed above him like a judgment waiting to be spoken, and those who entered felt at once that the room belonged more to the hard man beneath it than it had to the easy one who usually laughed there. Varys came first, soft-footed and powdered, wringing his hands just enough to imply distress without committing himself to any particular cause for it. "My lord," he murmured, "such troubling times." "You knew," Stannis said. The eunuch spread his pale hands. "I know many things. Whether I know them in time to save anyone is another matter." "You knew," Stannis repeated, "and you said nothing." Varys' smile was sad and slippery. "If I had spoken to the wrong ear, I might have hastened the very ruin we seek to avoid. You are here now. Let us call that Providence." Stannis' expression suggested Providence was a suspect defense. Before he could press further, Petyr Baelish sauntered in with ink on his fingers and amusement thin as paper over unease. "I leave the city to count casks and creditors for half a morning," Littlefinger said, "and return to find it conquered by law. There's novelty for you." "Be grateful law came first," Stannis said. "Another man might have tried fire." Littlefinger's eyes flicked once toward the throne, once toward Ned, and once toward the doors through which the Queen had earlier been led. He saw the shape of the new board as quickly as any man alive. "Then I suppose I must discover how best to serve it." Ned did not believe a word of that, but for the moment, even a snake could be useful if all the paths out of the pit were watched. Outside, bells still tolled. The city swelled with rumor. Some said the Queen had murdered the king. Some said Stannis had come to murder the Queen. Some said dragons had been seen above the bay, and that was why the royal fleet returned. The truth, as ever, moved slower than fear. Toward evening, a horn sounded from the lower gate and was answered from tower to tower. The king had returned from the hunt. Robert came into the Red Keep at dusk, spattered to the thigh with mud, reeking of horse and sweat and leaf mold, his hunting cloak torn by bramble and his temper already frayed from a bad day's sport. The boar they had tracked since morning had broken cover twice and escaped them both times. One of the hounds had been gored. Sir Barristan's white cloak was dirtied from helping drag the beast away. Lancel Lannister rode at Robert's side with a face too careful by half. The king wanted wine and a fire and a chance to curse the forest for making him feel older than he liked. Instead, he rode through a gate lined with gold cloaks at rigid attention, saw the Dragonstone men on the walls, and reined up so sharply his stallion threw foam. "What is this?" he barked. No one answered quickly enough. Renly came down the steps first, and that was wrong already. Renly ought to have been grinning and full of some jest about antlers or ale. Instead, his face was shuttered. Ned followed, and behind him, Stannis. For an instant, Robert only stared. The sight of his middle brother standing armed in the castle he had not set foot in for years seemed to strike him deeper than insult. His eyes narrowed. He slid from the saddle with all his old force, threw the reins at a groom, and strode across the yard as if he meant to hit someone before a word could be spoken. "Stannis." Robert darted. The brothers stopped an arm's length apart. They had the same bones still, though one wore them thick with meat and the other gaunt with iron. Robert's beard was black shot through with silver. Stannis' face was tighter, his mouth harder, his eyes hollowed by old grievances and sleeplessness. Between them stood a lifetime of should-have-beens. "Why are your men on my walls?" Robert demanded. "Because yours were not to be trusted," Stannis said. That brought the red straight into Robert's face. Mind your tongue. Ned stepped in before the old wound could split wider. Your grace, come within. There is grave matter to lay before you. Robert swung on him. What grave matter? Ned did not glance at the yard, the servants, the watchmen, the boys holding hounds. He said it plainly. The queen is under guard. The silence that followed was so complete the stamping of a horse became loud. Robert stared from Ned to Stannis and back again. Under guard. Yes. His laugh was a dangerous thing, with no mirth in it. You had best pray there is reason enough for this. There is, said Stannis. Robert's gaze settled on him again, and whatever he read there made him stop shouting. The king, who had spent years laughing problems smaller than they were, suddenly looked like the young warlord who had once crossed half a kingdom to break another man's chest with a hammer. Inside, he said. The throne room was lit by torches and deepening dusk. The Iron Throne threw long black bars of shadow across the floor. Robert strode up the center of the hall and turned, not to the throne but before it, as if he would hear the matter standing face to face with the steel he had won. Barristan took his place at one side, grave and uncertain. Renly stood at the other. Ned felt the old ache in his leg from the climb to the dais, the other older ache from everything that had led to this. Stannis did not waste a word softening the blow. Your children are not yours. Robert's hand closed around the hilt of the hunting knife still at his belt. It was a simple motion, instinctive, and every man in the room heard it. Take care, Robert said very softly. Ned went to the table that had been set below the dais and laid his hand upon the open lineage book. He spoke of Jon Arryn. He spoke of the visits to the armorer, the brothel, the careful tracing of Robert's blood through bastards hidden and acknowledged alike. He spoke of black hair and black eyes and black tempers, of the unbroken stamp of Baratheon seed, of 3 children fairer than the lion on Casterly Rock. Stannis added what he and Jon Arryn had learned together before fear and poison and silence separated them. Varys, summoned and pale, confirmed enough without saying how much he had always known. Pycelle trembled through a fumbling account of the old book and Lord Arryn's questions. By the time the tale was done, Robert had not moved once. He was not a subtle man nor a learned one, but he was not a fool either. Ned could see the reckoning behind his eyes as memory sorted itself against memory. Maya in the Vale, black-haired. Edric Storm at Storm's End, black-haired. Little Bara, black-haired. Gendry, black-haired. Joffrey at the age of 5 with his pale curls and green eyes, and his little mouth curled already in contempt. Tommen pink and golden. Myrcella shining like beaten wheat in the sun. Robert's face seemed to empty, not of feeling but of blood. Bring her. Cersei entered between guards with her hands manacled in links of gilt steel, because plain iron was thought too coarse for a queen, and Stannis had said nothing about the insult. She had changed her gown. She had braided her hair. If she was to stand before Robert accused, she meant to do it as magnificently as chains allowed. Joffrey followed under Sandor's watch, white with fury. Tommen came unwillingly, eyes swollen from crying. Myrcella walked very straight for a child. Robert looked first at Cersei, and whatever pity might once have lived anywhere in him died. Say it false, he said. Cersei met his gaze and smiled. Nah. Not kindly. Never kindly. Would you believe me if I did? Say it. She let the silence stretch. No. That one word cracked something in the room more surely than any shout. Tommen made a broken little noise. Joffrey took a step forward and stopped when Sandor's hand gripped his shoulder again. Robert's voice was hoarse now. You hoard in my bed. In your bed? Cersei laughed softly. You were seldom in it long enough to claim it. You came smelling of wine and old victories, called me by another woman's name, and thought a crown enough payment for my life. If there is shame here, do not pretend it is mine alone. Nah. His hand shook where it rested on the knife. Are they James? She tilted her head. Who else would they be? Barristan Selmy closed his eyes. Renly looked away. Ned felt every man in the room recoil, not because the truth surprised them now, but because she spoke it without even the courtesy of regret. Robert moved faster than his size suggested he could. He was before her in 2 strides, one huge hand fisted in her hair, dragging her face up. Guards half raised their spears in panic. Stannis did not move, though his jaw clenched. "I should kill you now. You should have been a better husband," Cersei said through the pain. He threw her from him so hard she struck the floor and skidded on the rushes. Myrcella cried out. Tommen began sobbing. Joffrey surged forward with a wordless shout, dagger drawn from somewhere in the folds of his coat, and would have stabbed at Robert himself if Sandor had not wrenched his arm back so violently the knife clattered across the stones. "There," Stannis said, voice cold as sea spray. "Look at him. That is no son of yours." Joffrey's face blazed crimson. "I am the prince." "No," Robert said. The word came low, almost dead. Then louder. "No, Ta. You are not. Nay, you done day. Domora. Right." He turned to the assembled court, to the lords and guards and servants who had drawn near the doors despite themselves, to the throne that had made him king and the steel that had cost him better things than crowns. "Hear me. Joffrey Tommen and Myrcella are not of my body. They are not of my line. They have no right to my name, my lands, or the Iron Throne." The hall seemed to shudder around the words. Tommen wept openly now, calling for his mother. Myrcella knelt beside Cersei, trying with small hands to help her sit. Joffrey stared at Robert with such naked hate that even then knew the boy would never be anything but dangerous while breath remained in him. Robert looked at Stannis. It was not a warm look, nor an easy one, but it held something that had been absent for years, recognition stripped of pride. "You were right." Stannis inclined his head. "I wish I had been wrong." Robert gave a sound that might once have become a laugh, and had instead curdled. "Do you? Gods, man. That almost sounds like pity." He turned back to the room. "Sir Jaime Lannister is attainted for treason, incest, and flight from the king's justice. Tywin Lannister is to answer for the conduct of his house." He broke off, then corrected himself. "Cersei Lannister is to remain in close confinement until sentence is passed." Cersei, on her knees, looked up through loosened golden hair. "Sentence." Robert stared at her as if trying to remember whether he had ever loved her enough to make this wound mortal. "Do you need me to name the crime again?" He mounted the first step of the Iron Throne, then the second, and stopped. For once, the seat did not seem to mock him. It loomed over the hall like the point of a spear. He did not sit. He faced them all from beneath it, broad and furious and broken. "Lord Eddard remains my hand," he said. "Lord Stannis Baratheon stands confirmed as my heir until lawful issue of my body should replace him. Let ravens fly this night to every lord in the 7 kingdoms. Let no man say he did not know the truth when he chose his side." A murmur ran through the room. There it was, spoken before witnesses too many to silence. Renly went very still. Stannis did not smile, because Stannis had never been made for smiles at moments when other men would seize them. He only bowed his head once, accepting not a gift but an obligation he had expected all his life, and trusted no one to give him freely. Robert descended again, and came to stand within arm's reach of Ned. His voice, when he spoke to him alone, was rough enough that only those nearest could hear. "You knew. I learned and sent at once for Stannis." Robert's red-rimmed eyes searched his face. "You did not warn her." "No." "Good." The king swallowed hard. "If you had, I might have had to kill you too." He turned away before Ned could answer, and in that turning there was more weariness than in any old man Ned had ever known. That night the ravens rose black and innumerable from the Red Keep, carrying the ruin of House Lannister in their claws. West of the city, under the first stars above the King's Road, Jaime Lannister rode with blood drying on his side, and did not slow for pain. He had one thought only: get to his father before the realm closed its fist. Jaime reached Casterly Rock on the 4th day, riding the last horse he had not killed beneath him. He had changed mounts 3 times before the Blackwater Rush, twice more in the Riverlands, paying once, threatening once, and stealing when there was no time for either. The cut along his ribs had clotted badly, then reopened, then clotted again beneath a crust of blood and road dirt. He slept in the saddle more than once, and woke only because the horse stumbled. By the time the rock's pale towers rose above the sea haze, he looked less like the Kingslayer sung of by girls than like some battered sellsword with too much pride left to fall down. The guards admitted him without challenge. No rider in the West carried himself like Jaime, even half dead. Tywin Lannister received him in the Hall of Heroes beneath the Stone Kings of old. The chamber was long and golden with reflected light from the sea. Banners hung between carved lions. A dozen candles burned steadily despite the drafts that forever prowled the rock's hidden veins. Tywin stood at the far end beside a table spread with accounts and letters, wearing dark red velvet and a chain of linked gold, as immaculate as if he had been expecting a call from a prosperous merchant rather than a son covered in dried blood. Kevan was there as well, hands braced on the table. A pair of guards closed the doors behind Jaime with a thud that echoed. For a moment, no one spoke. Tywin's eyes traveled from Jaime's face to the wound, to the ruined white cloak, to the absence behind him where Cersei and the children should have been. Then Tywin said, "Speak plainly." Jaime laughed once, winced, and tasted copper. "Stannis." Kevan swore under his breath. Tywin did not. "How much?" "Enough." Jaime let a servant take his sword at last because his hand had begun to shake. Ned Stark learned the truth. Sent for Dragonstone. Stannis came with the fleet and half his damned island. The Watch opened the gates. Renly stood with them. They took the city before Robert came back from hunting. Tywin's face altered so little that another man might have thought nothing at all had passed through him. Jaime knew better. The old man's wrath was a furnace banked under iron doors. "And your sister?" "Confined." "The children?" "Alive, guarded." "Robert knows." Jaime met his father's eyes. "Robert knows." Kevan let out a breath. "Then the realm will split like rotten timber. Perhaps." Tywin folded Jaime's blood-stained letter once more with fingers that never fumbled. "Or perhaps it will close ranks around a public scandal and leave us isolated. Much depends on whether men fear Robert's rage more than they hate Stannis' claim." Jaime dropped into a chair without leave. "There's more. Robert named Stannis heir before the court. Eli, Darn, Dun, Shaw." That won a flicker, the nearest thing to surprise Tywin ever allowed. "Before witnesses." "Half the castle." Kevan looked from father to son. "Then Renly may move." "He may," Tywin said, "but not soon enough to help us if we do nothing." Jaime braced an elbow on the arm of the chair, feeling at last a full bone-deep drag of exhaustion. "You'll call the banners." "I'll do more than call them." Tywin turned to the map table. "Gregor rides at dawn for the border. A Dam Marbrand to the passes. Sir Flemont and Sir Forley to raise the western levies. Ravens to every bannerman. This is no longer a matter of scandal. It is a matter of survival." Kevan frowned. "If we move first, it brands us rebels." Tywin's gaze did not leave the map. "We were branded the moment Robert put chains on my daughter." "Cersei brought this on herself," Kevan said before sense could stop him. Silence fell. Jaime looked up sharply. Tywin did not raise his voice. "Perhaps she did. That is irrelevant. There it was. House before person. Name before sin. The Lannister way boiled to its essence. Jaime had known it since boyhood and still sometimes recoiled from its purity. He thought of Cersei on the floor of the throne room. Hair spilled around her. Not afraid. Never afraid, only furious. He thought of Joffrey's knife flashing, of Tommen crying, of Myrcella's small hands trying to lift their mother. He thought of Robert's face when the truth struck home, and for a heartbeat some traitorous fragment of him had understood that too. He smothered the thought at once. "What of the children?" he asked. Tywin's answer came cold and immediate. "They are hostages now, which means they live until Stannis or Robert no longer needs them. That gives us time." "Then... by... for what?" Jaime demanded. "To beg. To make begging unnecessary." Tywin finally turned. In his eyes there was not panic, not grief, but calculation so exact it chilled the room. "Robert is humiliated before the realm. Men will whisper he sat a false brood on the throne for years, while drinking and whoring and letting others rule in his place. Stannis is rightful by law and hateful by nature. Renly will smell opportunity. The Tyrells will smell marriage. The veil may hide behind Lysa's skirts. Dorne will wait for advantage as Dorne always does. If we strike swiftly, the realm may still decide the lion is less dangerous than a crowned grievance from Dragonstone." "None. Kevin rubbed a hand over his beard. "And if it does not?" Tywin looked at him as though the question were too small to merit full answer. "Then we teach it fear." In King's Landing, fear had already changed houses. The Red Keep after midnight belonged to Stannis more than Robert, not because the king had abdicated anything, but because Robert had locked himself in his chamber with wine, rage, and a silence that unnerved even his squires. He would not see singers, whores, or comforters. He had sent away Lancel with such violence that the boy left half running. He had asked once for Ned, spoken to him behind a closed door for nearly an hour, then sent him away as well. What passed between them no one knew but the two men. When Robert emerged again, he looked older than he had at sunrise. Stannis remained awake. He moved from chamber to chamber of the castle with the exacting step of a man taking inventory of a realm that might have to be held by the throat if it were to survive. He inspected the gatehouses himself, the armories, the cellars, the barracks assigned to the gold cloaks, now that Janos Slynt had been reminded hourly of the shape of his duty. He posted Dragonstone men at the Queen's Tower and Northmen at the children's doors, because if either set guarded only the other, resentment might undo what law had won. Ned found him at last on the bridge to Maegor's Holdfast, looking out over the city lights. From there, King's Landing was almost beautiful. The dark river hung with torches, the roofs silvered by moon, the great sept pale as a pearl on its hill. Beauty from a distance was one of the city's most practiced deceits. "Robert asks for you at dawn," Ned said. "Then I will come at dawn." Ned rested his hands on the cold stone parapet. "Tywin will not suffer this quietly." "No." "And Renly?" Stannis' mouth thinned. "Renly has not yet decided whether he resents me more than he fears disorder. He stood with us. For today." Ned could not deny it. He thought of Renly in the stairwell before dawn, all easy grace wrapped around sharp instinct, and he thought too of the look on the younger Baratheon's face when Robert named Stannis heir before the assembled court. Duty had won one battle. Blood and vanity might yet begin another. "There is one more matter," Ned said after a pause. "The children." Stannis did not pretend not to understand. "They are bastards born of treason. They are children. They are also claimants any ambitious lord could set before the realm if left unwatched." Ned turned from the parapet. "I do not ask that they go free. I ask that judgment not run ahead of necessity." Stannis looked at him then, the moon making a hard white of his face. "Lord Stark, do you think I hunger to kill children?" Ned held the gaze. "I think you hunger to do what you believe the law demands." Stannis was silent a moment. Then, more quietly than usual, "The law is all that keeps men like Tywin from naming appetite justice. But I am not blind. Joffrey is dangerous. Tommen is a boy. Myrcella has done nothing but be born wrong. I will not stain this victory by butchering them in panic." There was, Ned thought, more mercy in that stern answer than many kinder men would have managed. "Then we are agreed." "For now," Stannis said. "Beyond the bridge, in a high chamber turned prison by a change of guards and a locked door. Cersei sat before an untouched plate and watched the moon rise over the river. She had given no tears to the women sent to attend her, no pleading to the knights at the door, no prayers to the gods she had used when it suited her and mocked when it did not. She sat with her hands folded and thought of Jaime riding west. She thought of Robert's face when she had told him true. She thought of Stannis, dry as old bone, standing in her house as if judgment had taken flesh. When the maid came timidly to take away the food, Cersei asked only one question. "Has the king passed sentence?" "Not yet, my lady." Cersei smiled a little at that. Not yet. Then there was time still, and time had always been a weapon sharper than most men knew how to use. By dawn, the West was raising lions. The judgment of Cersei Lannister was held 3 days later in the throne room, because Robert would not have it whispered that he feared to condemn her before his own seat. The city had by then swollen with rumor until rumor itself seemed a weather. Fleabottom knew before the court that the queen had lain with her brother. The Street of Silk knew before the Septs. The docks had embroidered the tale with poison, bastardy, stolen crowns, and unborn monsters. No crier could keep pace with what women at Wells and men over dice were already saying. By the time the lords gathered under the Red Keep's rafters, the shame of the royal house belonged to every alley in King's Landing. Robert wore black, not crimson or gold. The velvet made him seem broader and more somber, a storm cloud set upright. He had shaved his beard rough and left a nick beneath one jaw. He had not touched wine that morning. The absence sharpened him. There was a brutality and sobriety the court had not seen in years and did not know how to meet. Stannis stood a step below the throne with the papers of charge in his hand. Ned stood opposite, not as accuser but as witness in hand. Renly was present too, elegant and grave, his wound from Cersei's dagger bound beneath his sleeve. Varys and Littlefinger occupied their accustomed places among the council, both very still. Pycelle looked as if he had aged a decade in 3 days. The High Septon, summoned for sanctity if not necessity, gleamed under crystal and cloth of silver, his lined face strained with distaste. Barristan Selmy stood armored behind the throne, shame and duty wrestling quietly in the set of his shoulders. Cersei was brought in between guards. She wore dark green trimmed with gold, and if her wrists were manacled, she carried them as if they were bracelets. Joffrey sat under guard farther back, hands bound beneath a wool cloak for fear of what knives pride might produce. He did not take his eyes from Robert. Tommen and Myrcella, both dressed plainly at Ned's insistence, sat with a septa and looked too small for the hall that judged them. Stannis read the charges without flourish. Adultery against the king, treason against the crown, passing off the issue of incest as lawful heirs to the Iron Throne, conspiracy to subvert the succession. The words fell one by one, dry and final, and with each, the murmur at the edges of the hall thickened. When he was done, Robert spoke. "Do you deny any of it?" Cersei lifted her chin. "I deny that your rule was ever worth the price demanded of me." A stir went through the room. "That was not my question." "Then ask one you truly need answered." Her green eyes moved from Robert to the lords and back again. "Shall I say I took pleasure where I could find it? Every man here knows his own bed well enough to understand that. Shall I say I preferred my brother's beauty to a drunken king pawing at me with another woman's name on his breath? Perhaps they know that too. Shall I say I kept my children close because you would never have known them otherwise? That at least is truth. None may have done. Child." Robert took one step down from the dais. Barristan shifted as if to intervene and mastered himself. "You speak of truth as if it washes you clean." Cersei's smile was small and merciless. "Nothing washes any of us clean." The High Septon began some protest about sin and the sanctity of marriage, but Robert cut him off with a gesture rougher than courtesy allowed. He did not want doctrine. He wanted wound, named and repaid. Jaime Lannister fled. Robert's voice filled the hall like thunder trapped in stone. "Your father raises banners even now instead of coming to answer. You have no confession fit to ease this, only scorn." "Would confession ease you?" she asked. "Would tears restore your youth, your waste, your precious dream of yourself? You were never meant for peace, Robert. A crown only gave you an excuse to rot." None. Ganta. Even Ned, who had heard bitter words and anger all his life, felt the cruelty of it like a cut. Cersei knew where men were weakest. She drove there with relish. Yet if she meant to break Robert before the court, she failed. Something in him had gone past breakage. The humiliation was too great for mere temper. It had become a stone in him. He stood looking down at her as if he no longer saw wife or queen or even woman, only the shape of a treason that had occupied his household for years, while he laughed and drank and pretended himself invulnerable. "The sentence for treason is death," he said. Tommen began to cry quietly. Myrcella caught his hand. Joffrey surged half to his feet before the guards forced him down again. "No!" he shouted. "You can't! She's the queen!" Robert swung toward him with such force that Joffrey flinched despite himself. "She was never my queen," Robert said. "And you are no son of mine." The words landed harder than any blade. Joffrey went white, then mottled crimson, his mouth opening on some fresh obscenity that died under Sandor's stare from across the hall. The Hound had not left his side these 3 days, not from loyalty to the boy, but because Robert had ordered it, and Sandor's kind of obedience was more honest than most courtiers' love. Ned stepped forward before grief and fury in the room became something ungovernable. "Your Grace, before sentence is carried out, the children's place must be declared." Robert looked at him with bloodshot eyes. "They have no place." "They will have one," Ned said quietly, "because men will make use of them if the crown does not." Stannis took that up at once. "Joffrey and Tommen are to be held as wards of the crown until the realm is secure. Myrcella may be placed in the care of the faith when peace returns. None are to style themselves Baratheon henceforth." "Wards?" Joffrey spat. "Prisoners, you mean?" "Yes," Stannis said. "Prisoners." Robert considered a moment that seemed to cost him effort. "So be it," he said. "The boy Joffrey will be sent to Storm's End under heavy guard when the roads are safe. Tommen to River Run. Myrcella to the Great Sept until I decide otherwise. Separate them. I want no cubs learning from each other how best to bite." The High Septon inclined his head at once regarding Myrcella, perhaps seeing in it a pious display, perhaps only fearing to object. Tommen sobbed harder. Joffrey stared at Robert with an expression so nakedly murderous that several guards shifted closer without being told. Then Robert looked down at Cersei and said the thing from which no wit or pride could save her. "At first light tomorrow, you die." Not a murmur now. The room had gone too still. Cersei did not flinch. Her face was whiter than milk, but her mouth remained steady. "Then do it cleanly. You owe me that much." Robert laughed once, ugly and torn. "Ow you? Ow the realm," she corrected. "If you make a spectacle of me, the lions will have songs enough to feed on for 20 years. Stannis answered before Robert could. "I care nothing for lion songs." "No," Cersei said softly, and now her gaze found him. "You care only for being right, even when right turns the kingdom to ash." Something passed through Stannis' eyes at that, quickly banked. "The kingdom was set to ash the day you laid your brother in the king's bed. She was taken then, before she could give a last speech the singers might later polish into some grandeur she had not earned. Yet as the guards led her out, she turned her head not toward Robert, but toward Joffrey. "Remember," she said. "To what? None could tell. To hate? To avenge? To endure?" Joffrey's bound hands clenched white in his lap. Tommen buried his face in the Septa's shoulder. Myrcella watched her mother go with a rigidness that would haunt Ned for years. The next morning dawned colorless and cold. A scaffold had been raised within the outer yard of the Red Keep, not in the city square. Robert would not give the mob a queen to paw with their eyes. Lords and officers attended. The High Septon mumbled prayers that sounded thin in the open air. Ilan Payne, mute and grim, waited with the great sword of the king's justice across his shoulder. Cersei walked to the block without stumbling. She refused blindfold and prayer alike. Her hair had been loosed from its braids and shone in the morning like a banner of beaten gold. She sought Robert once in the gathered faces, and found him upon the wall above, cloaked in black fur, one hand on the stone before him as if needing something solid to keep upright. Then she knelt. When the sword fell, Myrcella screamed somewhere inside the keep where Ned had ordered the children confined, and the shutters barred against the sight. Joffrey's answering howl of fury seemed less human. Tommen only wept. By noon, ravens had flown again, this time carrying not accusation but judgment. Cersei Lannister was dead by the king's command. Jaime remained attainted. Tywin was ordered a final time to present himself and submit or be named a rebel before gods and men. The reply came not by bird but by fire. The first villages in the Riverlands burned within the week. It began near the Red Fork, where Gregor Clegane and Sir Amory Lorch rode with men who wore no lion openly, yet left behind farms trampled into mud, women stripped of rings and sons, septs smoking, mills broken, bodies nailed to doors. Men fled eastward with what carts they could load, and tales no less terrible for being difficult to believe. By the time the first scorched peasants reached King's Landing, the city had already half expected war. Tywin only gave it a shape. Robert listened to the survivors in the yard below the Tower of the Hand, jaw working. One old man held a child burned along one arm. A woman with soot in her hair spoke of nights laughing as they set her roof alight. A barefoot boy, no older than Bran had been when Ned left Winterfell, kept asking whether anyone had seen his mother. No one answered him. When the last tale was done, Robert turned to the assembled council. The lion roars then. Good. I had almost forgotten the sound. Ned saw the old battle hunger wake in him, but it was not the reckless appetite of tourney or hunt. This was the dangerous, clear vigor of a man given a wrong he could finally answer with steel. Call the banners, Robert said. Stannis' gaze sharpened. The fleet can cut westward trade if I have leave. You have it. Ned, Robert said, and there was command in him now where grief had lived the days before. Send to River Run. Send north. I want Hoster Tully and every trout he can muster. I want your son at Moat Cailin ready to march if needed. Let Tywin learn what it is to set one realm against the crown, and find the whole realm answering. The game had become war, and no man in the hall could pretend otherwise. The Red Keep changed its smell when war came. For years it had smelled chiefly of perfume, lamp oil, roast meat, rushes needing change, and the subtler stenches of too many courtiers penned together within stone. Now iron and leather took hold of it. Armorers worked from dark to dark in courtyards and sheds. Horses crowded the lower wards. Ravens came and went in ceaseless black flurries. Squires pounded dents from helms that had not yet seen battle because every lord in the city insisted on showing himself war-ready before the king's eye. The kitchens boiled salt beef by the barrel. Even the songs drifting from the servants' halls altered, losing love and gaining marching beats. Robert trained. At first the yard stared. It had been long years since the king had taken hammer to hand for anything but show. He had grown thick and slow, men said. A great aging boar more fit for a table than a field. Yet the first morning he came down in mail shirt and boiled leather, hair tied back and face set with ugly determination. The whispers faltered. He chose not a blunted tourney toy but a true warhammer, the iron head dark from use, and swung until the watching men forgot to breathe. He was not the Robert of the trident. Nothing could restore what years and neglect had stolen. Yet muscle remembered where flesh had gone soft. Rage remembered where appetite had dulled. Each day he grew a little harder, a little less winded. By the fifth morning he caved in a practice pell so thoroughly that splinters flew like hail. Renly applauded. Barristan watched with a kind of sorrowing respect. Stannis, passing on some grimmer purpose, only said, "Try not to kill the yard before the enemy arrives." Robert barked a laugh at that, the first clean one Ned had heard from him since the Queen's exposure. "Then bring me an enemy sooner." Ned spent those days in parchment and fatigue. Ravens went to Winterfell, White Harbor, River Run, Storm's End, Gulltown, Highgarden, Sunspear. Every message had to say enough, not too much, and say it in a voice a lord could hear without imagining insult where command was meant or weakness where diplomacy stood. He wrote to Robb Stark to hold the North ready, but not march until called. He wrote to Catelyn to keep the girls close in her prayers from afar and Bran in her care. He did not tell her every detail. Some truths were better carried by victory than by ink. He wrote to Hoster Tully, though age and sickness had largely put River Run in Edmure's hands now. He wrote to Brynden Blackfish, who would understand war's shape faster than most. He wrote to Lord Manderley, who would know how to provision long roads and longer grudges. Each letter seemed to take something out of him. Words had never been his favored weapons. Yet in times like these, they were arrows let fly ahead of armies. Across the table from him in the council chamber, Stannis made war the way another man might make a ledger. He reduced fury to supply, loyalty to capacity, pride to distance measured in days and fodder. Little carved ships marked the Blackwater. Stones marked castles. Wax drops marked expected musters. Davos often stood near his shoulder, not as counselor in name, but as the kind of man Stannis trusted because he had once been a smuggler and knew how the world actually moved when lordly plans met muddy roads. "If Tywin means to force battle in the Riverlands," Stannis said one afternoon, "he will use the raids to draw us west while he seeks to break River Run before the northern levies can descend. Then we march west," Robert said. "The answer to raids is battle." "The answer to raids is not always the battle the raider wants," Stannis replied. "I can move food and men by ship to Maidenpool faster than by road. Davos can take smaller craft upriver where larger vessels cannot. If we hold the crossings, Tywin's speed becomes his trap." Robert leaned back, rolling the stiffness from one shoulder. "You plan as if war were a kitchen." Stannis' gaze did not flicker. "And you used to win as if it were a tavern brawl. We may both improve." Renly, lounging near the window in rose and green as if he meant to brighten the chamber by force, smothered a grin with visible effort. "This is the tender brotherly warmth I have so missed." "Speak to the point or not at all," Stannis said. "The point," Renly replied, "is Highgarden." He tossed a folded letter onto the map. The seal had been broken. The rose of Tyrell showed in green wax. "Mace is cautious," Renly said. "Olenna is not. Loras is offended that no one has asked his opinion, which means he has 3. They all understand that a realm embarrassed by a false queen may soon require a true one." Robert's expression darkened. "I'm not looking for a bride while my wife's blood is hardly dry. Your wife was your wife in name only, and you know it." Renly's tone softened. "This is politics, Robert. If the Reach joins us with full strength, Tywin is done before the leaves are off the trees. If Highgarden sits out the war, the West has room to breathe." Ned saw the flinch before Robert disguised it. Cersei's death might have been justice, but it had not left him light enough to welcome another marriage bed. Still, he was king. A king's grief fed less mouths than a king's alliance. Stannis read the letter in silence, then set it down. "If Robert chooses it, good. If he does not, we fight without them." "That is your answer to every problem," Renly said. "Fight without whoever is inconvenient." "My answer," Stannis said, "is not to stake the kingdom on whether Mace Tyrell feels sufficiently courted." Robert lifted a hand before that quarrel could ripen into something older. "Enough. I'll hear the Tyrell envoys when they come." Renly bowed his head lightly, victory enough for the moment. Ned knew there was more than alliance in that suggestion. Renly had always wanted Cersei gone. He had wanted Margaery Tyrell in the Queen's place before any of this, for reasons of strategy and of his own close friendship with Loras. Now what had been quiet ambition could be dressed as service to the realm. Meanwhile, Joffrey raged. The boy had been removed from the apartments he once expected to inherit and lodged in a strong chamber under the maiden vault with barred windows, a bed too plain for his taste. and guards who no longer bent eagerly beneath his contempt. He threw cups. He spat at septons. He tried twice to seize a knife at meals, and once to provoke Sandor into killing a guard so the blame might muddy the crown's hands. Sandor thwarted him with the bored efficiency of a man accustomed to savage dogs. He wants the whole world to know he still has teeth, the Hound told Ned after one particularly violent outburst. Best thing for a biting dog is a shorter chain and a longer memory. Tommen shrank into silence and books, emerging only when a kindly maester coaxed him into the gardens for air. Myrcella adapted in ways that made Ned ache. She learned who would answer gentle questions. She asked after Tommen before she asked after herself. She spoke of her mother only once, at dusk by the window of the maiden's chamber where she was kept. Did she know? Myrcella asked Ned when he came to see that the children were treated with decency. What do you mean? That it would end this way? Ned looked at the girl who might have been one of his daughters had the gods shuffled birth and blood differently. I do not know. Myrcella nodded, not because the answer satisfied her, but because she was polite enough to accept pain without forcing more from it than it could give. Joff says he will make all of you pay. Ned had no easy comfort for that. Joffrey says many things. He means that one. Ned believed her. In the yard below the Tower of the Hand, a column of Riverland men arrived on the third week after Cersei's death, mud-spattered and hard-eyed, trout banners limp from rain. With them came Sir Brynden Tully, the Blackfish, as lean and weathered as an old spear, and Edmure Tully bright with indignation and youth, though the youth had gone taut at the edges from hearing his people burned. Brynden embraced Ned like a brother of a different season. Edmure bent the knee to Robert and asked with no flourish when he might ride west and put Gregor Clegane's head on a pike. Soon, Robert said, if he doesn't lose it in battle first. The north came more slowly by nature and distance, but the first Manderley wagons laden with oats and smoked fish were already on the Rosby Road before the month turned. White Harbor understood that wars were often won by full bellies and dry boots rather than songs. Then the Tyrell envoys came. They entered the court all green and gold and rose perfume, a soft answer to the hard smells of war. Sir Loras rode at their head in armor polished bright enough to catch every torch in the hall, as beautiful and vain as rumor promised, with older men behind him carrying Lord Mace's words and Lady Olenna's far keener intentions. Loras knelt prettily. Robert endured it with the patience of a man accepting medicine. Highgarden offered grain, riders, and the strength of the Reach if the crown accepted a formal betrothal between Robert and Margaery Tyrell, once the realm was steadied and the period of mourning suitably observed. There were phrases of loyalty and devotion to peace and horror at incest. Underneath all of it lay a simple truth. The Tyrells meant to profit from the Lion's fall. Most houses would, Ned said later when Robert paced in his chamber, sour at the thought of being traded again into marriage as if kingship were a market stall. Hey, but must it be done so damned prettily? Robert muttered. He drained not wine but watered ale, and looked at it as though betrayed by its lack of strength. She's young enough to be my daughter. Not so young as all that, Renly said from the hearth. And clever besides. More to the point, her father's granaries could feed a winter and her brother's banners could bury Tywin under flowers and spears. Robert grunted. Flowers. Then he looked to Ned. What say you? Ned thought of war, and of what war ate. I say it is wise. Robert closed his eyes a moment. When he opened them, the decision had settled in him like another stone among many. Then wise it is. Gods help me. I grow practical in my age. No, said Stannis from the doorway. Only cornered. For once Robert did not snap back. He gave a tired half-smile instead. That too. The betrothal would not be shouted from the walls yet. Not until Tywin had been beaten enough that alliance with the throne looked like wisdom rather than wager. Still, the message went south in quiet forms, and the Reach began to stir. The realm, which had seemed on the verge of shattering, was hardening into sides. In the west, Tywin's banners multiplied like wounds. In the capital, Robert's hammer rang in the training yard. In the north, Robb Stark drilled men on cold earth beneath a sky already paling toward winter. And in the dungeons below the Red Keep, in a narrow chamber where damp gathered on the stone, a jailer one night found a scrap of parchment worked loose beneath Joffrey's pallet. The boy had somehow stolen enough soot to scratch on it. When the parchment was brought to Ned, he unfolded it and found only one line, repeated 3 times in an unsteady hand, sharpened by fury. "I am the true king." Ned held it over the candle until it blackened and curled away to ash. They rode west beneath a sky the color of old pewter. The royal host was not one army so much as several forced into common purpose by the king's fury and Stannis arrangements. Robert rode at the center under the crowned stag, stormlords and crownlanders about him. Ned rode with the van when roads narrowed and the rear when baggage threatened to lag, because the hand's work followed an army as surely as steel did. Brynden Tully and Edmure brought Riverland men who knew every ford and mill and copse between the Blackwater and River Run. Renly glittered on the flank with young knights who made a pageant of war until they met its first corpse. Stannis did not remain in the city as many expected. He rode too, though more often to the side where maps changed shape against the world's refusals, while Davos moved ahead and behind by boat and small horse with messages, grain, and whatever practical miracle the day demanded. The land worsened as they pressed on. At first it was subtle, a field half-harvested because the men who should have cut it had taken swords instead, a cottage door hanging open, sheep wandering untended near a lane. Then came the true marks. A mill burned to a black shell beside a stream, 3 bodies in a ditch stripped of boots, a sept with its 7 faces smashed, and one old septon nailed above the door like a lesson. Smoke stains up the walls of villages from which every pot and blanket had been carried off. Women walking east with children on their hips and the look of animals that had learned men were worse than wolves. Ned heard names he would remember unwillingly for years. Sharer, Wendish Town, a cluster of crofts near the Red Fork, whose name no one agreed upon because the place itself was half gone. He saw Gregor Clegane's work in the size of hoofprints, and the ruin of men trampled where they stood. He saw Amory Lorch's and smaller cruelties, women beaten for rings, boys hanged because their fathers had fled, barns fired with old folk inside who could not run fast enough. War always came talking of honor and arrived smelling of burnt grain. Robert rode through that ruin like a man being fed fresh fuel. He had not forgotten what it was to see villages burned by enemy hands. In him, the old rebel king and the wronged husband had merged into something simpler and more dangerous. A lord certain of the enemy's guilt and eager to answer it with weight. At Derry, they met the first true resistance. A screen of Westerman knights attempting to hold a crossroads long enough for more raiders to withdraw behind them. Robert barely waited for the lines to settle. He drove his hammer into them with a shout that startled birds from half a wood away, and the first man to meet him lost horse, shield, and breath in one blow. The watching host, who had come expecting their king to command from safety, found instead that he meant to fight. Men love courage in a ruler because it frees them from the humiliation of dying for a coward. The cry that went up then was not courtly. It was hungry. By evening, the crossroads were theirs. Robert came back splashed in mud and blood not his own, smiling like a man who had found at last the work he was born for. Ned wished he could take comfort in that. He could not forget the peasants by the road or the letters waiting every night by lamplight. Victory in one field did not unburn a home. Stannis understood that better than Robert and less tenderly than Ned. While the king chased retreating outriders, Stannis set about making the victory useful. He ordered the crossings strengthened, scouts doubled, stores redistributed, wounded triaged by rank of chance rather than rank of birth. He sent Davos with shallow-drafted boats up a narrow branch of the Trident carrying grain and spare arrows to meet them farther north, an audacity no highborn commander had thought of because the channel looked too mean for dignity. Davos made the run twice and came back laughing salt into his beard. "You should have seen their faces," he told Ned at supper by the watchfires. Westermen watching food float past where they swore no carts could pass the road in this weather. Men think rivers belong to fish and ferrymen until a stubborn fool proves otherwise. Naive. "Stannis," tearing bread with precise fingers beside the fire, said only, "A stubborn fool has its uses." That was his warmth, and Davos accepted it as such. The first close report of Jaime came near the village of Stonehenge. A captured scout, frightened enough to tell the truth if he knew it, swore the king's lair had gathered the West's vanguard around him, and meant to draw the royal host deeper while Tywin massed the main strength nearer the forks. Jaime was seen in bright armor at dawn and dusk, always where the line threatened to buckle, always getting away before larger forces could pin him. Songs made him seem 10 feet tall. Wounded men cursed his smile with a bitterness usually reserved for old lovers or bad kings. Robert spat into the fire. "Good. I'd rather break the pretty one before the old lion." "You may not have the choice," Stannis said. "Jaime is bait unless he is a fool. Tywin is neither sentimental nor stupid. He means to pull you off balance." Robert glowered. "You'd have me creep. I'd have you win." Ned watched them over the flames and thought how strange it was that the realm had nearly lost itself, because these two men had spent so many years failing to speak plainly until there was blood enough to force it. Robert was heat, Stannis iron. Alone, each might shatter. Together, if they could endure each other, they were something hard to stop. Renly adapted to war better than Ned might have guessed. He did not love the stink of dead men or the mud that ruined velvet, but he loved motion, command, the admiration of younger knights, and the opportunity to turn charm into obedience. Where Robert inspired by force and Stannis by certainty, Renly inspired by making men want to be the sort of fellows who pleased him. It was not contemptible. Whole battles had been won by less. The Tyrells joined them near Bitterbridge with a flourish of banners so rich in green and gold, the army seemed suddenly to have marched into a harvest painting. Sir Loras rode in at the head of 1,000 mounted knights, bright as a dream and half as practical, though their lances were real enough. Behind him came food wagons, bowmen, more levies, and envoys full of elegant assurances that Highgarden stood with the rightful king against treason, disorder, and all enemies of peace. Robert accepted their homage grimly. Renly looked pleased enough for 3 men. Stannis counted carts, horses, and the day's rations they represented. If Tywin had hoped to isolate the crown, the roses choked that hope. Still, the West did not yield. Tywin fell back in measured stages, giving ground where he must, striking where he could, burning as he went if denial could not be converted into possession. He meant to teach the Riverlands that a land between great powers was always the first to bleed. He also meant to goad Robert into a reckless rush toward Riverrun, where the lion might still close its jaws upon overextended prey. The royal host reached the camps before Riverrun to find Edmure's outriders bruised but not broken, and the castle itself uninvested. Tywin had not committed to a full siege. He had ranged instead, seeking advantage in movement. That was encouraging and dangerous both, because it meant he still believed the greater battle ahead could settle matters. At Riverrun's hall, Brynden Tully spread maps beside Stannis, and Tywin's marks began to emerge from rumor like a beast from brush. The old lion was concentrating near the Ruby Ford, where roads and rivers and pride all crossed in ways that invited decisive violence. If he could smash Robert there, the political work already done in King's Landing might unravel. Lords like winners. Small folk fear victors. A realm publicly shamed could still run back into a familiar maw if the New Order stumbled in blood. "We take the ford first," Stannis said. Robert tapped the map with one thick finger. "He wants it. He will want it more when he sees he does not have it." Ned nodded slowly. "If we hold the crossing, his raids become retreat. The Riverlands will rally to us in full. And if he attacks us there," Brynden said, "the Trident fights on our side." Robert looked around the table. He saw no disagreement he could break through by force, and perhaps war had already sharpened him enough to know when sense outmatched instinct. Then the Ruby Ford. That night, rain began. By morning, the roads were filth, and the whole host moved through them like an iron plow. Men cursed. Horses slipped. Wagon axles snapped. Stannis seemed almost pleased. because bad weather was another hardship that rewarded discipline over swagger. Davos boats, moving in channels widened by rain, kept pace where wheels bogged. The Tyrell wagons groaned but did not falter. Robert marched in muck to his knees and never once asked for delay. When they made the high ground above the ford at last, scouts came galloping in with the news every commander expects and dreads at once. Jaime Lannister held the farther bank. The battle at the Ruby Ford began in rain and ended in blood the river carried away for miles. Jaime held the west bank with near 5,000 men when dawn showed him to the royal scouts, his banner bright against the grayness, lion rampant snapping above a line of shields. He had chosen his ground well. The ford there broadened over a stony shelf, shallow enough for cavalry in fair weather, treacherous in flood. Behind him rose a long wet slope where archers could work and reserve, horse could gather force. Farther back, on higher ground under a cluster of oaks, Tywin's main banners showed themselves at last in disciplined crimson. The old lion had come to watch the trap close, but the trap was not the one he thought. Stannis had marched half the night after making camp, taking picked men and Davos boats through a side stream swollen by rain to seize a low island upstream where willows bent almost into the current. From there, bowmen and spearmen now crouched unseen in wet brush while the main royal host formed openly on the east bank, Robert at its heart, banners rippling heavy with water. Tywin saw only the obvious strength and prepared to answer it with his own. Robert rode the line before the horns. Rain ran from the rim of his helm and darkened the black velvet stag on his surcoat. Men cheered him because men always cheer the king before battle, but this morning there was more in it than ritual. They had seen him fight on the road. They had seen his hammer crush plate and bone alike. The old stories were not wholly old after all. "Westermen," he roared across the rain to where the far bank bristled with steel. "I've come for your lion. Send me the cub if he's all you've got." "Nah, I'm done. Be sure," Jaime heard. Even across the water, Ned could see the flash of white teeth. The Kingslayer put spurs to his horse and rode a little way ahead of his line. Golden armor wet and splendid. Every inch the sort of figure singers turned into lies. "If you want a lion, come and drown for one," Jaime shouted back. Robert laughed like thunder. "Gladly." The horns blew. Archer spoke first. The air full of rain and feathers. Men hunched under shields. Horses screamed. The ford churned at once as Robert sent forward not the main charge, but a probing line of mounted men to test depth and resistance. Jaime answered with arrows, and a sudden rush of Westerman horse from the flank, slamming into the crossing before the royal line could settle. Two of Robert's riders went down in water that turned pink around them. "Hold!" Stannis barked. His infantry moved with a discipline Tywin's scouts had perhaps underestimated, shields locking, spears lowering, not rushing foolishly into the current. On Robert's left, Brynden Tully led riverlords to reinforce the shallower southern edge where the bank dipped. On the right, Renly's bright knights champed for the order to charge and were denied it with visible offense. Ned stayed a little behind the first line with the reserve and the standard, feeling the whole battle's shape in the strain of waiting. Jaime came again, this time at the center, his horse plunging through spray, his personal guard tight around him. He hit the foremost Stormlanders like a thrown spear, cutting one from the saddle and another across the face before the men even understood he had reached them. Robert answered that challenge as if he had been begging for it since sunrise. He drove forward into the ford with his hammer up, mud and water blasting from his horse's hooves, and for one blazing instant King and Kingslayer seemed about to meet in the river itself. They did not. A knot of men closed between them, screaming and slipping. Robert's hammer broke one rider out of his saddle entirely. Jaime's sword flashed silver and left a Crownlander tumbling headless into the current. The ford became a chaos of half-seen shapes, banners dipping and rising, men dragged down by armor into water too swift to pity them. "Now," Stannis said. A horn sounded from upstream, thin but sharp through rain. The willows moved. Davos boats shot out from concealment, hugging the island's lee, low and black and sudden as otters. In them crouched spearmen and bowmen who had waited an hour waist-deep in cold for this moment. They hit the west bank above Jaime's line where Tywin had thought the water impassable, leaping into mud and loose stones with a shout that turned heads at exactly the wrong time. Arrows rained from the willows. Westerman archers twisted to answer and exposed their flank to the crossing Robert had been forcing all morning. "Forward!" Ned cried to the reserve. He went with them because at a certain point command from behind becomes only a different kind of fear. Gray-cloaked Northmen plunged into the ford beside Riverlanders and Stormlords, shields up, boots slipping on hidden stones. The water hit his thighs, his waist, nearly his chest in one sudden channel before the bed rose again. He came out the other side gasping and sword drawn into a knot of men too intent on Davos Landing to see him until he was among them. He killed one with no memory later of the face, turned another with his shield, and heard the standard bearer behind him shouting the direwolf over the storm. Tywin's trap opened at last. Trumpets shrilled from the hill and his reserve cavalry began to move, crimson blurring down the slope in a disciplined wheel meant to smash Robert's line just as it won the bank. It would have worked against a lesser foe or a less wary brother. Stannis had kept his own heavy horse back for that moment. He rode them not into the river, but obliquely along the east bank to the narrowest point, then over where the stones rose enough for a man to trust weight and speed. Crownlanders and Dragonstone men hit Tywin's descending reserve in the flank before it had room to gather full force. The crash of it seemed to shake the rain from the sky. Stannis' banner disappeared in the press and reappeared farther on, inexorable as a blade shoved between ribs. Robert gained the bank. Once he was out of the water and on firmer ground, the battle changed. He fought on foot now because his horse had gone down beneath him with an arrow in the eye, and afoot Robert was terrible in a way mounted men seldom are. He used the hammer with both hands, broad stance planted in mud. Every blow a thing meant to end a life through whatever metal stood in the way. Men gave back before him not because he was king, but because no man wants to be where such force lands. Jaime saw and came for him at last. He spurred through wreckage, gold armor battered now, his white cloak turned brown with rain and blood. 3 men tried to stop him and failed in 3 heartbeats. He reached Robert with a cry that was half challenge, half hate, and the two collided amid broken spears and bodies in a spray of black water. The Psalms would later make a clean duel of it. There was nothing clean. Robert's hammer crashed against Jaime's shield and splintered it from arm to shoulder. Jaime's sword glanced from Robert's helm and cut deep into his upper arm where plate ended. Robert grunted, shifted, nearly took the horse's forelegs out from under Jaime, and only missed because another rider slammed into him from the side. Ned shouted without knowing what word he used. Then Brynden Tully's men crashed through the gap, and the duel became battle again. Jaime wheeled, trying to cut free toward his own line now that the field had turned treacherous under him. His horse slipped on a corpse and went down to one knee. Stannis was suddenly there from the flank, shield red with mud, sword in hand rather than the heavier mace he favored for sieges. Jaime hauled the horse up in time to catch the first blow, but not the second. Steel shrieked. Jaime's blade went spinning. He drew a dagger with his left hand and might still have found some impossible path through it if a Northman's spear had not taken the horse in the chest. Animal and rider crashed together. Jaime rolled clear with cat-like speed despite armor, dagger out, blood on his teeth where he had bitten through his lip. He rose to one knee in the mud facing Stannis, one hand braced, the other ready to strike. "Come then," Jaime said. Stannis might have killed him there. Men later swore they saw the choice pass over his face. But a live Kingslayer was worth more than a dead one, and Stannis was too much the servant of necessity to choose satisfaction over use. He kicked Jaime's dagger hand aside, brought the edge of his sword to the blonde throat, and said, "Yield." Jaime laughed, rain streaming off his lashes. "To you, to the king." Jaime looked past him then and saw what Stannis had already measured. The west bank was folding. Davos spearmen held above. Robert's stag flew on the slope. Tywin's reserve had been turned. Men in crimson were beginning to run not in ordered withdrawal but in that ugly ripple of self-preservation that once started, spreads faster than fire. On the hill, the old lion's banner still stood, but around it the space was opening. Jaime spat blood into the mud. "I'll not kneel." "You need not." Stannis nodded once to the men behind him. "Bind him." By noon, it was over. Tywin withdrew in better order than most defeated men could have managed, which was to say not enough order to claim anything but loss. He took what remained of his center and fled westward under hard pressure, leaving the ford, the slope, and much of his cavalry in royal hands. Gregor Clegane escaped, though wounded. Amory Lorch vanished. Adam Marbrand fought a rear action good enough to save several thousand men from slaughter and won Robert's grudging respect thereby. But the field was lost, and with it, the West's last claim to initiative. Robert found Jaime bound beneath guard, and stood over him, breathing hard through the pain in his arm while the rain finally thinned to mist. "So, this is the lion I was promised." Jaime, sitting in the mud with his hair plastered to his face and his hands tied, managed to smile anyway. "You'll have to make do." Robert looked as if he might kill him for the insolence, then barked a laugh instead, sharp as a wound. "No, death's too easy. Your father can learn what it is to lose a son, and still have him breathing." Jaime's smile faltered then, only a little, but Ned saw it. The wounded were gathered. The dead counted badly, then counted again. The river carried helms and planks, and 2 men who would never be named. Ned moved among the survivors until dusk, seen to lists, to surgeons, to messages sent at once because one battle won badly enough can sour into another lost. Robert's arm was stitched. Stannis changed none of his bloodied clothes until the disposition of prisoners was written and sealed. Davos sat on an overturned barrel, wringing rain from his sleeve and grinning like a man who had smuggled victory past an enemy's nose. As night fell over the Ruby Ford, the campfires of the royal host spread across both banks like a second firmament. Somewhere beyond them, Tywin rode west in darkness and defeat. The war was not ended, but it was decided. Tywin Lannister sued for terms before the moon had fully waned. He did not come in person. Pride, wounds to the west, and calculation all forbade it. Instead, Sir Kevan rode under a peace banner to the royal camp outside the smoking shell of one more Riverland holdfast Tywin had abandoned on retreat. He came grave and spare and visibly older than when the war began, carrying letters sealed with the lion and written in a hand too controlled to be anything but Tywin's. The terms Robert demanded were not mild. Tywin would bend the knee publicly and renew fealty before the court. He would pay restitution in gold, grain, and hostages for the devastation of the Riverlands. Gregor Clegane and Amory Lorch were to be delivered for judgment. If Tywin could not produce them, the debt would stand against him in land and rights. Jaime would remain a prisoner of the crown until the king saw fit to release him, which all men understood meant perhaps never. Joffrey, Tommen, and Myrcella would remain entirely beyond Lannister reach. Casterly Rock would keep its lord, but the title of Warden of the West would be suspended during the king's pleasure. Most wounding of all, Tywin was commanded to appear and hear the royal judgment of his house, without altering so much as his jaw in defiance. When Kevan read the terms by a campfire light, even Renly whistled softly. Stannis did not. "He should thank us for not taking the Rockstone by stone," Stannis said. Kevan's mouth tightened. "My brother will say you profit much from the king's anger." "I profit from the law," Stannis replied. "Try it sometime." Robert let the silence stretch until Kevan had to feel the weight of all the eyes upon him. Then he said, "Tell your brother this as well. I killed Rhaegar on the Trident and took a kingdom from him. If Tywin means to test whether age has gentled me, he may come do it with his own sword and save the Raven's time." "No." Kevan bowed because no answer would improve that. "I will tell him." Tywin came. He came not in sackcloth or showy humility, but in rich crimson and hard gold, clean as always, as though neatness alone could deny defeat. He bent the knee in the throne room of King's Landing while half the court held its breath to see if his bones would crack from the unfamiliar motion. They did not. He rose with his face composed into something like stone courtesy, and heard his house stripped, fined, bound, and diminished. Only once did feeling show, and then barely, when Jaime was brought in under guard, white cloak gone from him, wrists chained, and Robert announced before the court that the Kingslayer would be remanded to a fortress, not of his choosing, until the crown determined whether the wall might profit from a lion in black. Tywin's eyes flicked to his son. Jaime, lean from captivity but unbowed, returned the look with a crooked smile that might have been bravado or apology or nothing at all. No one but they could have said. Tywin's face did not change, yet Ned saw the hand nearest his cloak tighten once. Joffrey's departure was uglier. The boy had never stopped hating. Confinement had only honed him. When the day came to send him to Storm's End under heavy guard, to live out his youth behind walls that knew the law of storms better than the law of whims, he fought like a trapped ferret. He bit a guard's hand. He called Robert names that made even hard men glance away. He screamed for Jaime, for his mother, for the throne, for vengeance, for things no boy should have had to understand and yet understood too eagerly. Robert watched from the steps with his face a mask and said nothing until Joffrey was finally hauled into the wagon barred with iron. Then he said, low enough that only those nearest heard, if he comes back harder. He was hard already, Ned answered. Robert looked at the receding wagon and gave no sign whether he had heard. Tommen left more quietly for River Run, clutching a book Maester Pycelle, stripped now of council place and much dignity, though not his chain, had given him in some fumbling attempt at gentleness. Tommen asked only whether there would be cats in the Tully Castle and whether Myrcella would write. Myrcella herself entered the keeping of the Great Sept, with a composure that shamed many older hearts. In white she looked too solemn, too small, too much like a peace offering the gods had no right to ask. Septa Mordain went with her, grateful for purpose. Sansa wept when she heard. Arya said little and sharpened her anger against unfairness into something fiercer and more durable than tears. With the lion broken publicly, the realm settled into its new shape. Robert announced his formal betrothal to Margaery Tyrell in the turn of the season, when grief had dulled enough for politics to wear a garland over its iron. The girl came to court lovely and fresh and trained in smiles that hid ambition without erasing it. Robert received her kindly, if not joyously. He would never again mistake marriage for love. Yet he knew the value of peace she brought in train with roses and grain. Mace Tyrell glowed. Olenna watched everybody and missed nothing. Renly was almost insufferably satisfied. Stannis regarded the whole business with the expression of a man obliged to endure music at table, so long as the food remained sufficient. There was one greater change still. On the first day of the new year, before lords from every corner of the Seven Kingdoms, Robert named Stannis not only heir again but Hand of the King, taking the chain from Ned's neck himself and placing it upon his brother's shoulders, with emotion roughened by old feelings never properly sorted. "You were right when I needed right more than comfort," Robert said for all to hear. "God's help me. It seems that makes you fit for this." A stir of dark amusement passed through the hall. Even Stannismouth threatened for a bare second to betray something almost human. "I accept," he said. Ned stepped back and felt a weight lift from him like armor after too long worn. He had done what honor required, but the South was no home for him. Its heat, its whispers, its relentless nearness to the throne had scoured him raw. With the kingdom steadied and Stannis in office to hold what had been won, Winterfell called to him from every quiet moment. Robert knew it before Ned asked. "You always were half snow and half stubbornness," the king said when they stood alone in the godswood of the Red Keep, where southern trees grew in imitation of northern silence, and did not quite succeed. "Go home, Ned. Bring your girls. Hold your son ready if I call, and pray this new peace lasts longer than the last." Ned looked at him long. Robert was still Robert, broader than his best years, marked now by grief and war and a new wary distance from his own pleasures. Yet there was steel in him again too, and for the first time since the rebellion Ned thought perhaps the crown sat on a man, rather than merely upon his appetites. "Come north when you can," Ned said. Robert snorted. "I remember the cold. You never remembered it enough. No, Robert admitted, glancing upward through red leaves to a sky paling toward winter. That was always your gift. When Ned rode from King's Landing at last, Arya chafed at the slow pace. Sansa kept one last sad silence for the life she had imagined and lost, and the banners of direwolf and stag streamed together above the gate. Men cheered as they passed, because peace, even uneasy peace, tastes sweet after smoke. Along the walls, gold cloaks stood straighter than they once had. The harbor was full of orderly ships. The city still stank. It always would. But its throne no longer perched over an unseen nest of lies. Within the Red Keep, Stannis settled into the Tower of the Hand as if he had been born waiting to inhabit rooms too little loved by other men. He rose before dawn, read until others begged for sleep, punished corruption where he found it, and found it almost everywhere. Littlefinger resigned before he could be flayed by audits, and drifted out of court with a smile too quick and baggage too light for innocence. Varys remained, because spiders survive every cleaning, though now even he walked a little more carefully. Janos Slynt was removed at last, not hanged as Stannis once threatened, but sent north to discover that walls of ice do not respect former titles. Pycelle lingered in disgrace. Barristan served with undiminished honor, and the sadness only deepened by all he had seen. Jaime was sent not to the wall, not yet, but to Dragonstone under severe guard, where the sea and basalt might teach him patience if chains could not. Some said Stannis kept him there because a prisoner at Dragonstone was a hostage set close to the hand that understood hostages best. Some said Robert was not ready to decide whether killing the man or sparing him hurt Tywin more. Jaime himself made a game of mocking his gaolers, until the games wore thin and only the sea remained to answer. Tywin returned west poorer in pride than gold, and began the long, poisonous labor of restoring what he could. He would never forgive. Men like Tywin did not forgive, they accounted. But account books can be lost to fire, sons to war, daughters to swords, and the West had learned that even lions bled when the stag and the wolf stood together. At Storm's End, Joffrey brooded behind thick walls and sea winds that mocked every claim he scratched into memory. At Riverrun, Tommen discovered that books and kittens could soothe wounds lineage had made. In the Great Sept, Myrcella learned prayers, letters, and the quiet shape of a different kind of power. The realm drew breath. Harvests resumed where fields had not been ruined. Villages were rebuilt in the Riverlands with Crown gold and Tyrell grain and Lannister silver, paid under compulsion. Songs began already to change the story, because songs always lie towards symmetry. They called it the Day of the Black Sails when Stannis took King's Landing in his brother's name. They called Robert's victory at the Ruby Ford the Second Hammer. They called Cersei a she-lion, a witch, a beauty damned by pride, depending on which hall paid the singer. They made Renly handsomer, Ned sadder, Davos luckier, Stannis sterner still. No song told the whole thing. None could. Late one evening, as winter's first true bite touched the bay, Robert climbed to the walls above the river with a fur mantle around his shoulders, and found Stannis there staring east where the water darkened into distance. "You look as if you expect another fleet," Robert said. "I expect trouble," Stannis replied. "Fleets are only one shape it takes." Robert stood beside him in companionable irritation, which was as close as the brothers ever came to ease. Below them, King's Landing glimmered. Not peaceful, perhaps, but ordered. That was more than could have been said a year before. "You wanted this all your life," Robert said after a while. Not quite a question, and not quite an accusation. Stannis considered the dark water. "I wanted what was due." That sounds like a miserable sort of wanting. Stannis gave him the barest slant of a look. "You had better sorts and see where they brought you." Robert huffed laughter, then winced because old hurts were finding their homes again in weather and quiet. "Fair." He sobered. "Do you think it's done then? Truly done?" "Nah. Stannis' gaze remained on the east, but in his mind perhaps it turned elsewhere. North to a wall most southern lords treated as a story's edge, south to Dorne's long memory, west to Tywin's pride, east beyond the narrow sea where exiles with old names still breathe. Or perhaps he thought only of the next ledger, the next judgment, the next place where law must stand because men failed when it did not. No, he said. Nothing that matters is ever done. Robert grunted. The answer did not please him, which likely meant it was true. Yet he did not argue. They stood together above the city they had both nearly lost and saved in wholly different ways, while the wind off the Blackwater smelled of salt, smoke, and the first hint of snow. Far away beyond the narrow sea, a girl with silver gold hair stepped into a khalasar and did not yet know the shape of the realm that waited for her. Far to the north, ice deepened in the roots of the world, and old cold things stirred where crowns meant nothing. But for that one winter evening, the Iron Throne belonged to a living king, the capital held to law rather than lies, and Stannis Baratheon, who had taken King's Landing before war could unmake it utterly, stood watch over a peace as stern and fragile as glass.